Hello, Lit and Comp 2. I'd like to provide you guys with a video of the lesson and kind of discussion points for our new grammar device, which is the semicolon. So what you'll need today is this packet. It should be located on Google Classroom, and it's also linked in the slideshow right here. So you'll have some opening writing prompts just to kind of quickly answer to allow us to discuss Chapter 8, which you guys should have read for homework. We're going to be looking at some mentor sentences and kind of talking out some things as we go. So I'm going to click through the slideshow and kind of reference back and forth to the handout. And hopefully you guys learn a little bit more about semicolons and how that could help your sentence variety after we've done a wubbies and fanboys and short sentences a few weeks ago. So pick at least one of the prompts and kind of answer it. The prompts discuss, like, did Gatsby have to die? What are some of the big themes that Fitzgerald seems to be arguing? We only have one chapter left, so he should have some pretty clear arguments, and basically just trying to get a sense of how you feel about, kind of the conclusion of the car wreck. So just FYI for homework, the semicolon writing, which is a paragraph that you'll do on that packet, that will be due on Monday. I'm asking that you do it hard copy. Unless you are unable to be in the classroom, you could do it digitally and share it with me. And then Chapter 9 we will read in class together. So the good news is we won't have extensive notes on Chapter 9 because we'll work through it together on Friday. So we talked about sentence variety with the Me Mentor text, and you guys learned about fanboys and wubbies and simple sentences. So now I want to add another grammar device, which is semicolons. So how do you use semicolons? I want you to use that in your discussion of Gatsby Chapter 8. And then what we're going to do is kind of talk about, the sentence structure when a semicolon should be used and how it should be used. So there are sample sentences, and I want you guys to fill out the chart here. So you read them. If you guys could highlight the semicolon, like there's one right there. There's another one. Tell me two things that you notice. If you know how to use a semicolon, or if you want to try to imitate it, and then if you have any questions. So going back into the slideshow, here's some things that I'm hoping you guys notice about those sample sentences. Semicolons help bring together two complete sentences. It's kind of like an equal sign. So both sides of the sentence should be complete, and then you can use the semicolon. They're really good for complexity and sophistication. I always tell kids that semicolons make you look smart because they're kind of elegant looking. They're definitely a more sophisticated, complex grammar device, but they're actually pretty easy to use. The sentences before and after the semicolon should be complete. And what you could do is you could put a period where the semicolon is, and if that period works and you have sentence 1 makes sense and sentence 2 makes sense, then your semicolon is correct. But make sure that the sentences complement or are actually connected and related to one another. So there is a section of Chapter 8 that I typed up for you guys that I wanted you to revisit. It is the death scene with Gatsby. I think there's a lot of really cool literary devices. I think it also is a little bit unclear, especially this imagery down here. So I want you just to use that to kind of refocus or revisit Chapter 8 and then just do a little annotation. And then we're going to fill out these rules. So this is a fill-in-the-blank situation. So what's wrong with this sentence? Not content. I'm talking about grammar. So J. Gatsby was a man of money and power. Neither could save him from his early demise. So if you're looking grammatically, there's only two grammar devices here. You got your period and you got your your comma. And if you know there's something wrong with this comma, good. This is what we call a comma splice. A comma splice, I don't know who or why or what grammar god determined this is a bad thing, but it is a bad thing. It's a big no-no because what you're doing is you're smashing two ideas together, and the comma is not strong enough to support the break or the pause for your reader to process sentence 1 to sentence 2. And if you look, I'm saying some pretty important things here. I'm talking about who Gatsby is character-wise. I'm also talking about the plot point of his death. I need something stronger than this puny little comma to separate it. So what you could do is you could put a semicolon there. You could also put a period. And lastly, you could put a fanboys, because the fanboys word allows a little bit more processing time. So you could do J. Gatsby was a man of money and power, comma, but neither could save him from his early demise. But comma splice, no good. I didn't know this was a thing until college. And basically it's a run-on. It's not as tragic of a run-on as if you fail to use the comma at all, but it does create some sentence flow problems. So if you're more of a visual kid, I kind of look at this as an equation. So this is your equal sign, or this middle box is your semicolon. You're going to bring a complete sentence or an independent clause on both sides, a period to finish it. So that's one equation or one successful complex sentence. If you don't want to do the semicolon, or if you got too many semicolons going on, then you would just go basic period. So for instance, sushi is fabulous, period. I love to eat at Sakura. Or I could say sushi is fabulous, semicolon, I love to eat at Sakura. Or you could do a fanboys. So sushi is fabulous, comma, and I love to eat at Sakura. So these are the three ways to bring two complete independent clause sentences together. All right, if you don't do one of these three, you're at risk of creating a run-on or a fragment or other, syntax issues. So here's a couple rules about the semicolon. Rules can be used to fix comma splices. Rule 1 is the two sentences should be related, and ultimately, if you're fixing it, that's great, but I want you to use it for style. It creates style and length, which is just, it makes you look and write smarter. Both sentences have to be complete. That's the biggest thing you need to check. Because what will happen is kids will just kind of randomly throw it into a sentence, but not pay attention to the two sides. So they'll say combine two related semicolon sentences together. So you got to make sure it's not interrupting the flow of ideas. It should bring two complete ideas together. It could be used in place of an and. A lot of kids will drop that fanboys because it's so common and it happens so often in writing, and they'll use a couple semicolons instead, which is nice sentence variety. Rule number 2. So this is super important, and it goes back to, that equation of complete sentence, complete sentence. Semicolons cannot be used with a Wubby's phrases or dependent clauses, because a dependent clause is an incomplete sentence and it's not complete in terms of ideas. So whenever I watch this movie, comma, I cry, that's what it should be, because whenever is your a Wubby's. But what happens is people think because it's a pause, it therefore could use anything. That's not true. A Wubby's prefer their commas, hands down. What you could do, though, is you could do what's called super grammar. Whenever I watch this movie, comma, I cry, semicolon, Nicholas Sparks is a tragic writer. So then what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging the Wubby's, and then I'm acknowledging sentence 1 and sentence 2 and bringing it together with a semicolon. So I want you to look at these sentences on the handout. There's 4 of them. I want you to label them. So you'll read it and then label it. You could do a sad face if it is incorrect. You could do a happy face if it's correct. That's the first thing, and you could go right here on the side. You do need to tell me why the sentence is yay or nay right here, and you need to do it for everyone. So if there is one that is correct, you're going to tell me why it's correct. If it's incorrect, you're going to tell me why it's incorrect, because I want you to consider those rules with independent and dependent clauses. All right? So now I'm going to go through the answers. Okay. So, until Myrtle's death, semicolon, the story seems hopeful. This is incorrect. That's a sad face. It's an a Wubby's. Until is the a Wubby's phrase. So it should read, until Myrtle's death, comma, the story seemed hopeful. So make sure you label it, and then I want you to annotate why it's good or bad. So it's bad because it's an a Wubby's phrase. Next, Gatsby's death was a shock and a tragedy, comma, he didn't deserve to die. Once again, incorrect, sad face. This is a comma splice. This is just like my first sentence. What's wrong with this? And then right here, since Daisy's fight with Tom, semicolon, she hasn't made contact with Gatsby. Once again, it's a little bit longer, a little bit more complex than this one, but it's still an a Wubby's phrase, and that should be a comma. The last one is actually correct. It is what we call a super sentence or super grammar. It is complex, but it acknowledges all the grammar devices like it's supposed to. So, a Wubby's. Although Tom may be able to keep Daisy, comma, she will never forget her first love. So that is punctuated correctly. It is a complete sentence. And then what I want to do is add some more. Semicolon. Their relationship is bound to be difficult as long as they are together. So this is really cool. It's really cool for sophistication. It's really cool for arguments or thesis statements. So if I was writing a paper about Gatsby overall, this could be a great sentence with super grammar. Although The Great Gatsby appears to be all about the American dream, comma, it is more about how social classes divide people. Semicolon. The story illustrates this with peoples like the Buchanans, Gatsby, Nick, and Myrtle. Pretty sure Buchanan's is spelled wrong, but you can see it's got some nice flow. And remember, if you can take this out and put a period, then you are using the semicolon correctly. So I want you to make a couple sentences on the handout. They could be about Gatsby or just about, I have a dog, semicolon, he is very fluffy. I want to make sure that both sides of the sentences are complete, so you should be able to put a period in between those two things where the semicolon is, and if you did it the right way, then you're using it correctly. And if you want to, you could try some super grammar. So although I love dogs, comma, cats are cuter, semicolon, I think cats are better at snuggling, period. All right, so now it's your turn. I want you to take the lesson, and I want you to apply it to a paragraph. So here's where your sample sentences are going to go. Here are the questions I created. They're a little bit reminiscent of the opening questions. So you pick one. Pick one. Do not write about all of them, because then you're not giving me a full paragraph of analysis. So you could tell me, what do you think of the diction choice Holocaust to conclude the end of the chapter? Nick says the Holocaust is complete, so you would analyze that line and what it means for the chapter as a whole. The next thing is analyze the death of Gatsby, how he dies, why he dies, what does it mean, why would Fitzgerald kill his main character? And then the other one is, what are one or maybe more of the themes, and what are the arguments that Fitzgerald is presenting, especially within this chapter, because this chapter, following the climax of chapter 7, is falling action, and so those themes should start to emerge. So you're going to write out your paragraph down here. This should be reminiscent of that Gatsby prompt that you guys wrote about a few weeks ago. So you would tag it in The Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald. We read about the tragic death of J. Gatsby. It is a Holocaust. So what you'll do is 10 points is for using the semicolon. You need to use it twice. So I say twice because if you use it 4 or 5 times, it's too much. Semicolons are kind of a special grammar device. You don't want to overuse it. It's not like in a Wubbies or a Fanboys that is a little bit more common. But if you use the grammar twice, you'll be right here. If you want full credit, you should use a Wubbies and Fanboys and simple sentences. This is a heftier grade. This is 15 points, but you need to talk out the prompt really well. Good solid paragraph, good opening, closing lines, and you also need to have evidence from the reading. So you should use some quotes, and you should properly integrate them according to the rules of a dab, dollop, and lots of sauce. And then for 5 easy points, you need to make sure you highlight your grammar before you turn it in. So this is 30 points. There's the writing here. My last comment is, sometimes kids like to talk about Holocaust in relationship to the Jewish genocide that occurred in the 1940s. That would be obviously incorrect, because this book was written in the 20s. The Jewish Holocaust had not taken place. Was there anti-Semitism in this time period? Oh, sure, absolutely. But the word Holocaust, which means great destruction by fire, was not the Holocaust, capital H, until many years later. And when you think about the definition, that makes sense. That's why the Jewish community used this word to best describe the horrors of what happened in World War II. So, to close, hopefully you learned something new today. I'm excited to see what you have to say about Chapter 8 and how you use grammar to do it. And then this is just a fun little, meme, I guess. But semicolons have great pause. They really are a decent, moderate pause to help, flow from one idea to the next, as opposed to a complete stop. Or a comma, which really, like this picture shows, it's just not enough of a pause, all right? Like if a bear is chasing you. So thank you. If you guys have questions, let me know.